This is As Bill Sees It, page 21. Citizens again! Each of us in turn, that is, the member who gets the most out of the program, spends a very large amount of time on 12-step work in the early years. That was my case, and perhaps I should not have stayed sober with less work. However, sooner or later, most of us are presented with other obligations to family, friends, and country. As you will remember, the 12th step also refers to practicing these principles in all our affairs. Therefore, I think your choice of whether to take a particular 12-step job is to be found in your own conscience. No one else can tell you for certain what you ought to do at a particular time. I just know that you are expected at some point to do more than carry the message of AA to other alcoholics. In AA, we aim not only for sobriety, we try again to become citizens of the world that rejected and of the world that we rejected, and of the world that once rejected us. This is the ultimate demonstration toward that which 12-step work is the first but not the final step. Page 22. Fear is a stepping stone. The chief activator of our defects has been self-centered fear. Primarily fear that we would lose something we already possessed, or would fall, or would fail to get something we demanded. Living upon a basis of unsatisfied demands, we were in a state of continual disturbance and frustration. Therefore, no peace was to be had unless we could find a means of reducing these demands. For all its usual destructiveness, we have found that fear can be the starting point for better things. Fear can be a stepping stone to prudence and to a decent respect for others. It can point the path to justice as well as to hate. And the more we have of respect and justice, the more we shall begin to find the love which can suffer much, and yet be freely given. So fear need not always be destructive, because the lessons of its consequences can lead us to positive values. Page 23. Worshippers all. We found that we had indeed been worshippers. What a state of mental gooseflesh that used to bring on! Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? And then, with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? Who of us had not loved something or somebody? Were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It was impossible to say we had no capacity for faith, or love, or worship. In one form or another, we had been living by faith and little else. Page 24. Alike when the chips are down. In the beginning, it was 4 whole years before AA brought permanent sobriety to even one alcoholic woman. But as like the high bottoms, the women said they were different. AA couldn't be for them, but as the communication was perfected, mostly by the women themselves, the picture changed. This process of identification and transmission has gone on and on. The skid rower said he was different. Even more loudly, the socialite or Park Avenue stumble bum said the same. So did the artists and the professional people, the rich, the poor, the religious, the agnostic, the Indians, and the Eskimos, the veterans, and the prisoners. But nowadays, all of these, and legions more, soberly talk about how very much alike all of us alcoholics are when we admit that the chips are finally down. Page 25. We cannot stand still. In the first days of AA, I wasn't much bothered about the areas of life in which I was standing still. There was always an alibi. After all, I said to myself, I'm far too busy with much more important matters. That was my near perfect prescription for comfort and complacency. How many of us would presume to declare, well, I'm sober and I'm happy. What more can I want or do? I'm fine the way I am. We know that the price of such self-satisfaction is an inevitable backslide, punctuated at some point by a very rude awakening. We have to grow or else deteriorate. For us, the status quo can only be for today, never for tomorrow. Change we must. We cannot stand still. Page 26. True independence of the spirit. The more we become willing to depend upon a higher power, the more independent we actually are. Therefore, dependence as AA practices it is really a means of gaining true independence of the spirit. At the level of everyday living, it is startling to discover how dependent we really are and how unconscious of that dependence. Every modern house has electric wiring, carrying power and light to its interior. By accepting with delight our dependence upon this marvel of science, we find ourselves personally more independent, more comfortable, and secure. Power flows just where it is needed. Silently and surely, electricity, that strange energy so few people understand, meets our simplest daily needs. Though we readily accept this principle of healthy dependence in many of our temporal affairs, we often fiercely resist the identical principle when asked to apply it as a means of growth in the life of the spirit. Clearly, we shall never know freedom under God until we try to seek His will for us. The choice is ours. Page 27. Daily reprieve. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve, contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. We of AA obey spiritual principles, at first because we must, then because we ought to, and ultimately because we love the kind of life such obedience brings. Great suffering and great love are AA's disciplinarians. We need no others. Page 28. Troublemakers can be teachers. Few of us are any longer afraid of what any newcomer can do to our AA reputation or effectiveness. Those who slip, those who panhandle, those who scandalize, those with mental twists, those who rebel at the program, those who trade on the AA reputation All such persons seldom harm an AA group for long. Some of these have become our most respected and best loved. Some have remained to try our patience, sober nevertheless. Others have drifted away. We have begun to regard the troublesome one not as menaces, but rather as our teachers. They oblige us to cultivate patience, tolerance, and humility. We finally see that they are only people sicker than the rest of us. That we who condemn them are the Pharisees, whose false righteousness does our group the deeper spiritual damage. Page 29. Gratitude should go forward. Gratitude should go forward rather than backward. In other words, if you carry the message to still others, you will be making the best possible repayment for the help given to you. No satisfaction has been deeper and no joy greater than in a 12-step job well done. To watch the eyes of men and women open with wonder as they move from darkness into light. To see their lives quickly fill with new purpose and meaning. And above all, to watch them awaken to the presence of a loving God in their lives. These things are the substance of what we receive as we carry AA's message. Page 30. Getting off a dry bender. Sometimes we become depressed. I ought to know. I have been a champion dry bender case myself. While the surface causes were a part of the picture, trigger events that precipitated depression, the underlying causes, I am satisfied, ran much deeper. Intellectually, I could accept my situation. Emotionally, I could not. To these problems, there are certainly no pat answers, but part of the answer surely lies in the constant effort to practice all of AA's 12 steps.